Hey guys, tonight we're going to wander down a path less traveled, to a question that has tickled the minds of historians and dreamers for generations. What if ancient civilizations knew the Earth's true timeline, not in the way we do, with our carbon dating and geological strata, but in a deeper, more intuitive way? A story written not in books, but in stone and star and myth. Before we begin, a quick note. The journey we're about to take is a long one, stretching back through thousands of years. You probably wouldn't survive a week back then. What with the lack of coffee shops and the distinct possibility of encountering a fauna we'd now consider megalithic. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I often wonder as I record these where you all are. The silence of the past feels different depending on your own corner of the world. So, where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Is the moon high, or is the sun just beginning to think about rising? Wherever you are, thank you for spending this time in the deep past with me. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the cold. It seeps up from the stone floor through the soles of your feet, a deep mineral chill that has been waiting in the rock for millennia. You are standing in a passage, but it is not a passage built for a person of your size. The ceiling is low, forcing you to stoop. The walls, made of immense, roughly hewn stones, press in on either side. The air is still and smells of wet dust and time itself, scent like old books, but made of earth. This is Newgrange, in Ireland, a mound of earth and white quartz that has huddled against the Irish landscape for over 5,000 years. That's older than the pyramids of Giza, older than Stonehenge. It is a structure so ancient that its original purpose has been blurred by the slow, patient hand of time, polished into a mystery by countless rains and winds. You shuffle forward, one hand brushing the cool, textured stone of the wall. Your fingers trace over spirals and diamond shapes, carved by a people who left no written records. These are their words. This is their language. And we are, for all our technology, functionally illiterate in it. You probably couldn't read their writing, and neither can most experts. It's a gently humbling thought standing here. We have sent probes beyond the solar system, yet we cannot say for certain what a Neolithic farmer felt as he carved this triple spiral. The passage slopes upward, deeper into the heart of the mound. The darkness is absolute now, a velvet blackness that feels both empty and full. You can hear your own breath, a soft rhythm in the immense silence. This is not the silence of nothing. It is the silence of waiting. For what? You know the archaeological fact, of course. For a few days, around the winter solstice, at dawn. A slender shaft of sunlight pierces through a roof box above the entrance and travels for exactly 17 minutes down this long passage to illuminate the central chamber. It is a feat of engineering, of astronomy, carved with stone tools into a lasting calendar. But to stand here, in the off-season, in the perpetual midnight of the mound, is to feel the question, how did they know? How did they align this entire structure, this massive undertaking of a community, with such precision to the sun's most timid day? Was it just observation, decades, centuries of watching the sun's slow crawl along the horizon? Or was it something else, a piece of knowledge passed down from a time even deeper, a time we have no record of? This is the quirky, lesser-known detail that makes this place so captivating. The white quartz that gleams on the front of the mound wasn't just local. It was quarried from mountains over 50 miles away, a monumental effort to transport and arrange these sparkling stones. Why? Was it just for show? Or did the quartz, perhaps, hold a meaning we can no longer grasp? A piece of a mountain brought to this river valley to catch the first and last light of the sun. You finally reach the end of the passage, and it opens into a cross-shaped chamber. The space is small, domed, built of massive, overlapping stones that have held the weight of the hill above them for 50 centuries. You have to crouch. The weight of the earth above you feels palpable, a physical pressure. This is the womb of the mound, the Sacred Heart. You sit on the cold floor, your back against one of the great basin stones that once held, what? The bones of the dead, offerings to the gods. Or perhaps it was never about death at all, but about rebirth. The sun enters here into the deepest dark and brings light. It is a story told in light and shadow once a year without fail. Archaeologists still wonder if Newgrange was primarily a tomb, an astronomical observatory, a temple, or all three woven together. We may never know the name of the people who built it, or the words they spoke during that solstice dawn. But we can feel the intention. We can feel the deep, ingrained need to mark time, to tie their world to the cycles of the cosmos. Imagine standing here 5,200 years ago, the smell of damp earth and wood smoke clinging to your clothes. The community outside their lives, a constant struggle against the elements. And inside this dark chamber, a few chosen individuals, watching as a sliver of golden light pierces the darkness, crawling across the floor until it touches the back wall, a promise that the darkness will retreat, that the light will return, that the world will turn again. They knew the timeline of their world, the rhythm of its seasons, its birth and death and rebirth, with an intimacy we have long since traded for digital clocks and wall calendars. They built this not for us, not to be a mystery, but for themselves, to be their anchor in the vast, turning wheel of the sky. And as you sit in the silent dark, you can almost feel that anchor, its weight, its certainty. The first civilization to leave a mark on this island didn't leave a king's name. They left a clock built into a hill, set to the slow, steady heartbeat of the earth itself. The chill is deeper now, settling into your bones. The silence feels like it's listening back, and the question hangs in the air, as persistent as the carvings on the stone. What if they weren't just celebrating a solar event? What if they were confirming a timeline they already knew? A story told to them by their own ancestors, from a time lost to our shovels and our science. A timeline of the earth, written in the stars and in the stones, waiting for the light to read it once a year in the deepest dark. The memory of the cold, silent chamber of Newgrange stays with you as the world shifts around you. The damp, earthy smell of Ireland dissolves, replaced by an arid, gritty wind that carries the scent of dust and hot stone. The pressure of the low ceiling vanishes, and you are standing under an immense, open sky. A dome of brilliant blue so vast it feels like you could fall into it. The ground beneath your feet is no longer grass-covered mound, but a sun-baked plateau, and before you, stretching towards the horizon, is a landscape of lines. You are in the high desert of Peru, near the Nazca River. The air is thin and crisp. The sun is a tangible presence, a weight on your shoulders. And below you, etched into the dark, iron oxide-coated pebbles of the desert pavement, are the Nazca lines. From up here, they look like shallow, cream-colored grooves, scraped clean to reveal the lighter earth beneath. They are geometric, straight lines that run for miles, perfectly parallel. They are trapezoids that stretch wide, like massive runways for deities, and they are figures. A hummingbird with a beak like a needle, a spider, its legs articulated with precise biological accuracy, a monkey with a spiraling tail. You kneel down, running your fingers along the edge of one of the lines. The pebbles are warm from the sun. The groove itself is only a few inches deep. It seems impossibly fragile. A single afternoon of strong wind should fill it in. A good walk across it by a careless traveler could blur its edges. Yet here it is, having endured for nearly 2,000 years. The desert, you realize, holds its secrets, lightly but firmly. It is a place of immense patience, where the lack of rain and erosion means a mark made today could last for millennia. It's a gentle joke the planet plays. In the most lifeless seeming places, the past is most perfectly preserved. The sheer scale is what hits you next. You are standing next to a line, but you cannot see the shape it is part of. To see the hummingbird, the spider, the astronaut, that strange, large-eyed figure that looks like it's waving from a hillside, you would need to be 100 meters in the air. The people who made these designs, the Nazca culture, never saw them this way. They had no hot air balloons, no drones, no aircraft. They created these colossal artworks for a viewer that wasn't human. So, why? The well-known historical fact is that we don't really know. The leading theory, the one you'll find in textbooks, is that they were ritual pathways, walked by priests as part of ceremonies to plead for water from the distant, often invisible, gods of the mountains. The lines, it's thought, were sacred walkways, and the figures were symbols for constellations or clan identities. But as you stand there, looking at the endless straight lines converging on the horizon, the question from Newgrange returns, echoing in this new, harsher landscape. What if this, too, was a way of knowing the Earth's timeline? Not a solar calendar, but something else, a map of something unseen. This is where we find a quirky, lesser-known detail. Some researchers, like the late Maria Reich, who dedicated her life to these lines, proposed a connection to water. The Nazca Aquifer, the lifeblood of the region, flows beneath this very plateau. The lines and figures, she suggested, might be a giant map of the underground water sources. The spider, for instance, might be located at a point where several underground streams converge. The act of walking the lines was not just a prayer for water, but a ritualistic tracing of the water's own hidden path beneath the earth. They knew the timeline of their survival, the ebb and flow of the water that allowed them to live in this desert. They carved that knowledge into the face of the land itself. You begin to walk along one of the long, straight lines. The gravel crunches softly under your feet. The line is unnervingly straight, disappearing into the shimmering heat haze of the distance. How did they achieve such precision over miles of rough terrain? They likely used simple stakes and cords, sighting on distant hilltops. It's a testament to human skill and patience. But it feels like more. It feels like a statement, a line drawn in the sand, saying, "We are here. We understand the lay of this land. We have mapped the veins of the earth." Archaeologists still wonder if the lines were a form of communication, not with us, and not even primarily with the gods, but with the earth itself. A way of aligning their human community with the deep geological and hydrological forces that sustained them. We may never know the chants that were spoken here, the feeling in the heart of a priest as he walked the body of the spider, a creature connected in myth to rain and fertility. Imagine standing here 1,500 years ago. The desert silence is broken only by the wind and the faint, rhythmic shuffle of a procession. They are walking the line you are now standing on, their eyes on the horizon, their minds focused on the water, flowing silently, invisibly, deep below their feet. They are not lost. They are following a map of their world's most vital secret. The wind picks up, a dry whisper that seems to carry the ghosts of those prayers. From this vantage point, the lines are a mystery. But from the perspective of the ones who made them, perhaps it was the ultimate act of practical, spiritual science. They knew their place in the world because they had drawn it on a scale so grand that only the sky and the earth it nourished could read it in its entirety. The timeline they understood was not of years, but of the eternal, precarious balance between the desert's thirst and the mountain's gift of water, a balance they drew with breathtaking audacity for the ages to wonder at. The dry, whispering wind of the Nazca Desert begins to change, the gritty scent of dust and ancient stone slowly giving way to a new, heavy humidity. The immense, open sky contracts, crowded out by a canopy of green so dense it feels like a ceiling. The crunch of desert gravel under your feet is replaced by the soft, spongy give of leaf litter and rich, dark soil. The air grows thick, alive with the drone of insects and the distant, haunting calls of howler monkeys. You have been transported from one extreme of the ancient world to another. You are in the rainforests of Guatemala, and you are standing at the base of a pyramid that seems to grow directly from the jungle floor. This is Tikal, the capital of a Maya kingdom, a city that once thrummed with life, now sleeping beneath a green blanket of jungle. The pyramid before you, Temple I, the temple of the great jaguar, rises like a mountain, its limestone steps steep and worn. The summit, 47 meters above you, is crowned with a roof comb, a stone latticework that once held a brightly painted stucco facade, a final, defiant shout to the gods from the top of the man-made mountain. You place a hand on the stone. It is not cold like Newgrange, nor sun-baked like the Nazca Desert. It is warm, almost body temperature, and slick with a thin film of moss and moisture. The jungle is constantly trying to reclaim this place, to pull the stones back into the earth, to digest the city. Vines snake up the sides of the pyramid, and from the top a great tree grows, its roots gripping the ancient masonry like fingers. There's a gentle humor in this eternal struggle. Humanity builds its monuments upward, while nature patiently works to bring them back down to earth. You begin to climb. The steps are high and narrow, forcing you to use your hands as much as your feet. It is a strenuous, breathless ascent. With each step, you rise above the jungle floor, the humid air becoming slightly cooler. The sounds of the forest, the insects, the monkeys seem to grow more distant, as if you are climbing out of one world and into another. Halfway up, you pause and look back. The view is breathtaking. The tops of other pyramids, temples 2, 3, and 4, emerge from the green sea of the canopy-like islands. The sight is a testament to the sheer ambition of the Maya. They didn't just build temples, they built a skyline in the middle of a rainforest, because why not? Reaching the summit, you stand in the small, dark chamber of the temple. This was not a public space. It was the sacred, private domain of the ruler, the asterisk, Kewal Ajah, asterisk, the Holy Lord. From here, the world is laid out below you. The jungle stretches to the horizon in every direction, an unbroken expanse of green. The sky feels close enough to touch. This is where the ruler would have stood to communicate with the gods, to perform the rituals that kept the world in balance. The well-known historical fact about the Maya is their obsession with time. They didn't just have a calendar. They had a complex, interlocking system of them. The 260-day sacred round, the 365-day vague year, the long counter-linear count of days from a mythical starting point they placed in 3114 BC. They tracked the cycles of Venus with astonishing accuracy, calculated solar and lunar eclipses, and conceived of time in vast cycles, millions of years long. They didn't just mark time, they mapped its very architecture. But why? What was the urgency? The quirky, lesser-known detail lies not in the grand ceremonies, but in the quiet, practical science. The Maya, in this city of Tikal, built massive reservoir systems to collect rainwater, lined with clay and sealed with lime plaster. They understood their climate, its cycles of wet and dry, with a life-or-death precision. Their calendars were, in part, a sophisticated tool for water management and agricultural planning. Knowing when the rains would come, when to plant, when to store water, was the difference between a thriving metropolis and a ghost city. Their timeline was a survival manual, written in the stars. You look out from the temple, imagining the city in its prime, the great plazas below filled with people, the sounds of commerce and ceremony, the smoke of copal incense rising from 100 altars. The ruler beside you, clad in jade and quetzal feathers, isn't just looking at his kingdom, he is reading it. He is looking at the position of the sun, the phase of the moon, the appearance of Venus in the twilight sky. He is cross-referencing this data with the codices in his hands, the bark paper books filled with astronomical tables. He is, in that moment, the living embodiment of his civilization's greatest achievement, the mastery of deep time. Archaeologists still wonder if the Maya's precise timekeeping was born purely from practical need, or if it reflected a deeper philosophical belief that time itself was a divine, cyclical force that had to be carefully managed and placated through ritual. We may never know the full weight of responsibility a Maya king felt as he watched the stars from this very spot, knowing the fate of his people was tied to his ability to correctly interpret the celestial clock. Imagine standing here in 750 AD. The city is at its peak. The air is thick with smoke and the scent of chocolate and spices. Below, tens of thousands of people go about their lives, their existence governed by the cycles you are observing from on high. You are not just a king. You are the chief astronomer, the head agronomist, the high priest of time itself. You know the timeline of your world because you have to, because the jungle is always waiting, just beyond the cleared land, patient and hungry. The timeline you hold in your head and in your codices is the only thing holding it back. A soft rain begins to fall, a common afternoon occurrence in the rainforest. It patters on the broad leaves of the canopy below, a sound like a million gentle drums. The stone of the temple darkens with the moisture. The Maya knew the Earth's timeline not as an abstract concept, but as the very rhythm of life and death, of rain and drought, of creation and destruction. And from this high perch, you can almost feel that rhythm, a slow, powerful pulse beating through the stone, through the jungle, through the centuries, all the way to you. As the rain intensifies, the world below begins to blur, the greens and grays of the jungle melting together. The transition is gentle, the humid air cooling, the scent of wet earth and ozone growing stronger before the jungle itself seems to dissolve around the edges. The towering canopy of tickle fades, replaced by a new, more structured silhouette against a softer, hazier sky. The sounds of howler monkeys and tropical insects are replaced by a different kind of hum, the sound of a dense urban population, the bleating of sheep, the rhythmic clatter of looms, the heavy organic scent of the rainforest transforms into a complex aroma of baking bread, animal dung, frying fish, and the ever-present underlying scent of mud and water. You have traveled from the heart of the Maya world to another cradle of civilization. You are now standing on the soggy, reed-covered bank of the Euphrates River in Sumer, nearly 5,000 years ago. The ground squelches under your feet. It is spring, and the great inundation has recently receded, leaving the land saturated, incredibly fertile, and frustratingly flat. There are no stones here, no quarries, no cliffs to carve tombs into. The only resource is mud, thick, alluvial, glorious mud. And as you look towards the horizon, you realize that the distant mounds are not natural hills. You are looking at the accumulated layers of human ambition. These are the cities of Uruk, your Eridu. They are built of mud brick, and they are melting. Every rainstorm, every flood, slowly dissolves them back into the earth from which they came. It's a gentle, humorous reality of this place. The Sumerians invented the city, and the first thing their cities did was start to return to mud. They were building with temporary materials for what they hoped would be eternal glory. You walk away from the riverbank towards the nearest of these city mounds. The path is a track of dried, cracked mud, lined with reeds that tower over your head. As you get closer, the scale of the city becomes apparent. It is a chaotic, organic jumble of whitewashed mud brick walls, narrow alleyways, and the sounds of dense urban life. The smell is complex and overwhelming. Your destination is the center of the city, the ziggurat. It is not a tomb like in Egypt. It is a ladder, a massive, stair-stepped pyramid of mud brick with a temple at its summit. It is the city's axis mundi, the point where heaven and earth were believed to meet. You begin to climb. The stairs are steep, made of the same baked mud bricks as the rest of the structure. They are worn smooth in the center by countless sandaled feet, unlike the solitary, secret ascent of the Maya temple. This is a public climb. You pass priests in long, fleecy skirts, merchants carrying bundles, and farmers leading sheep for sacrifice. The air is filled with the smell of roasting meat and the heady, sweet smoke of cedar resin incense. Reaching the top, you enter the temple precinct. The view is staggering. The land is perfectly flat, a green and brown checkerboard of irrigated fields and date palm groves stretching to the hazy horizon. The river snakes through it like a lazy brown serpent. You can see the other city mounds, distant smudges on the plain. The sky feels immense, a great bowl inverted over the world. This is the well-known historical fact. The Sumerians in these mud cities gave us so much of the bedrock of modern civilization: the wheel, the sail, the plow, and, most importantly for our journey, writing cuneiform, the wedge-shaped script pressed into wet clay tablets. But as you look out from this man-made mountain, the question persists. What was the urgency? Why here, in this difficult, flood-prone, resource-poor land, did the spark of civilization catch fire so brilliantly? What timeline were they trying to capture, to control with their inventions? The answer, as always, is written in the mud. The quirky, lesser-known detail is one of sheer, pragmatic bureaucracy. The very first cuneiform tablets from the city of Uruk are not epic poetry, not king lists, not prayers to the gods. They are inventory lists. They are receipts. They record the number of sheep, the measures of grain, the bundles of reeds. 3 goats received from Yurlugal, 5 gur of barley paid to the temple. Writing was invented because the city, this new, complex organism, had become too big to run on memory alone. It was an accounting tool, a technology for managing surplus, for recording debt, for tracking the labor required to build this very ziggurat you're standing on. Their timeline was an economic one, a calendar of harvests, of trade, of rations. They were mapping the flow of goods, the lifeblood of their new, fragile, urban experiment. You look down into the temple complex below. In a shaded courtyard, you see a scribe at work. He is a young man, cross-legged on the ground. He takes a lump of wet river clay and pats it into a neat, rectangular tablet. With a stylus made of a sharpened reed, he begins to press marks into the soft surface. Asterisk, wedge, corner, line, circle, asterisk. He is not writing. He is asterisk, typing asterisk. This is the ancient world's version of data entry. It is methodical, boring, and utterly revolutionary. He is capturing a moment in time, a transaction, and making it permanent. He is creating a record that will outlast the sheep, the grain, the merchant, and even himself. The clay will dry in the sun, harden, and could last for millennia, which it has. Archaeologists still wonder if the Sumerians were fully aware of the Pandora's box they had opened. Did that first scribe, pressing wedges into clay to record 3 missing goats, realize he was inventing history? We may never know the name of that first bureaucratic genius, but his invention would eventually be used to write the asterisk epic of Gilgamesh, asterisk, a story about a king's quest for immortality, a story that grapples with the most fundamental human timeline of all, the fact of our own mortality. Imagine standing here 3,500 BC. The city hums below you, a miracle of human cooperation. The ziggurat is the engine of that cooperation, both a spiritual and an economic center. The priests who run the temple are also the managers of the city's grain stores, its land, its labor. They use the new technology of writing to schedule the maintenance of the canals, without which the city would starve. They know the timeline of the river's flood because their survival depends on it. They have charted the seasons, not with grand solstice monuments, but with countless tiny marks on clay, noting when to plant, when to harvest, when to expect the floodwaters. Their understanding of the Earth's timeline was embedded in the gritty, practical, day-to-day effort of just making a city work. A warm wind blows across the summit, carrying the dust of the plain. It is a dust made of pulverized mud brick and the dreams of the first city dwellers. They looked at a flat, featureless landscape and built mountains. They looked at the chaos of human commerce and invented a system to bring it to order. They looked at the relentless flow of time and, for the first time, began to pin it down, wedge by wedge, on tablets of clay. They knew the Earth's timeline because they had to balance the books, and in doing so, they accidentally began to write the story of us all. As you descend the ziggurat, the sun is beginning to set, casting long, deep shadows across the plain. The sounds of the city are softening, settling into the quiet of evening. The journey is not over. The Sumerians passed their knowledge on to the Akkadians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians. The clay tablets multiplied, the stories grew longer, the maps of the world and the cosmos became more detailed. But the thread, we are following the thread of a deep, perhaps shared, understanding of times about to lead us away from the cradle of civilization to a place far more remote and a mystery far more silent. You reach the bottom of the ziggurat and step back onto the muddy street, the sounds and smells of the first city swirling around you, a fleeting, vibrant dream before we move on to a world of pure, enigmatic stone. The warm, muddy smells of sumer, the scent of baking bread, animal dung, and wet clay begin to dissolve around you. The chaotic, vibrant sounds of the first city fade, not into silence, but into a new symphony. The air grows cooler, sharper, carrying the clean mineral scent of rain-washed stone and damp earth. The flat, featureless floodplain ripples and rises into rolling green hills, stippled with gray outcroppings of rock. The lazy brown river is replaced by the sight of the sea, a vast, moody expanse of iron-gray water, its surface textured by wind and dotted with low, rugged islands. You are no longer in the land of sun and mud. You have traveled northwest to the very edge of the ancient world. You are in the Orkney Islands, off the northern coast of Scotland, over 5,000 years ago. The wind is the first thing you truly notice. It is a constant, living force, rushing unimpeded across the open landscape, pulling at your clothes, whipping your hair. It carries the cries of seabirds, puffins, gulls, skuaza, lonely, beautiful sound. The light is low and slanted, even at midday, casting long, deep shadows that make the land seem both intimate and immense. This is a hard place, a place of short summers and long, dark winters. It seems an unlikely spot for a cradle of civilization. And yet, here, on this remote archipelago, a people flourished who left behind a mystery that, in its own quiet way, rivals the ziggurats of Sumer. You are walking towards a complex of low, grass-covered mounds near a loch. This is the Ness of Brodgar. It is not a single structure, but a sprawling Neolithic cathedral complex, as some archaeologists have called it. The well-known historical fact is that Orkney is home to spectacular prehistoric sites: the village of Scarabray, the chambered tomb of Misho, the standing stones of the Ring of Brodgar. But the Ness of Brodgar is different. It was a place of gathering, of ceremony, of industry that operated for over 1,000 years. It was a hub, a spiritual and social center for a network of communities across these islands. You approach one of the excavated structures. The walls are thick, built of layered flat stones called flagstones, which split naturally from the local bedrock. You have to step down into it. The floor is sunk into the ground. The interior is a series of interconnected rooms, some large, some small, with central hearths and stone-built dressers and box beds, much like those at Scarabray. But the scale here is grander, the workmanship even more refined. The walls, in places, are still decorated with traces of pigment shreds, yellows, ochres, and incised with geometric patterns, lozenges, and zigzags. You run your hand over the stone. It is cool and smooth, fitted together with such precision that, in some places, you cannot slip a blade of grass between them. The skill is breathtaking. These people were master masons, working with stone in a way that wouldn't be seen again in Britain for thousands of years. There's a gentle, humorous thought that occurs to you. While the Sumerians were inventing bureaucracy in mud, these Orcadians were perfecting dry stone walling in a gale-force wind. They were responding to their environment with the materials they had, and they were creating something of stunning, enduring beauty. But what was it all for? This is not a tomb like Mesho, though it has elements of the ceremonial. It's not a village like Skarabrae, though people clearly lived and worked here. As you move from room to room, you see the debris of a vibrant, complex society. In one corner, there are thousands of shattered sherds of beautifully decorated pottery and standware, with its delicate, incised patterns. In another, you find piles of worked flint and bloodstone, the waste from tool making. You see the bones of cattle, of red deer, of seals, evidence of great feasts. This was a place where people came together from across the islands and perhaps beyond to share, to trade, to worship, to build. The question of the timeline returns, whispering on the relentless wind. What cycle were they marking here? What understanding of their world did they encode in this complex of stone, perched on this narrow strip of land between the loch and the sea? The answer, as with Newgrange, is written in the landscape itself. The quirky, lesser-known detail is one of profound astronomical and terrestrial alignment. The entire complex of the Nes of Brodgar is not an isolated site. It is the dramatic centerpiece of a vast, ritual landscape. To its west are the towering, slender, standing stones of the Ring of Brodgar. To its east, across the isthmus, is the great chambered tomb of Meshbal. These three monuments form a triangle, a sacred geometry imposed upon the land. And Mesho, like Newgrange, is a solstice clock. For a few weeks around the winter solstice, the setting sun aligns perfectly with its long, low entrance passage, casting a beam of light that travels down the corridor to illuminate the back wall of the central chamber. But the alignment doesn't stop there. From the entrance of Mesho, if you look back towards the Ness of Brodgar, you would see the sun setting directly behind the complex. Furthermore, the Ring of Brodgar is positioned so that the midsummer sun rises over a particular notch in the distant hills, as seen from the Ness. This was a landscape engineered to track the sun's journey, to mark the dying and rebirth of the year. Their timeline was the cycle of the seasons, the swing from the deep, dark Orkney winter to the brief, glorious, endless days of the summer simmer dim. You walk out of the building and up onto a small rise, looking towards the Ring of Brodgar. The stones stand stark and gray against the sky, some tall and proud, others stubby and leaning. They are a circle of questions. There are no carvings here, no hieroglyphs, no cuneiform. Their language is their position. Their story is their silence. Archaeologists still wonder what kind of society could have organized the labor, the skill, and the sustained vision to create this ritual landscape over centuries? Was it a peaceful, cooperative society, as the lack of defensive walls suggests? Or was it led by a powerful priestly class who commanded the allegiance of the people? We may never know the name of the architect who first envisioned this alignment, or the feeling in the heart of a farmer as they walked from their small settlement to this place for the midwinter feast, watching the sun set behind the ness, knowing that the light would soon return to Mesho and to their world. Imagine standing here, 3000 BC. The wind is just as fierce, the light just as low. The loch is full of fish, the hills are home to deer, the seas are rich with seals and whales. The community has gathered. A great feast is underway. The air is thick with the smell of roasting meat and the smoke of alderwood. In a large central space, people are exchanging polished stone axes from Cumbria, amber beads from the Baltic, and pottery made in the local style. Stories are being told, alliances forged, and as the sun sets on the shortest day of the year, a procession makes its way towards Mesho. They enter the dark tomb, and for a few precious minutes, a shaft of golden light pierces the darkness, a promise of renewal, of life continuing. They knew the Earth's timeline because they had woven it into the very fabric of their world, into the sight lines between their monuments, into the rhythm of their gatherings. It was a timeline of community, of survival, of a deep, abiding connection to the land and the sky that governed it. As you stand there, the wind seems to carry the echoes of those ancient gatherings. The sense of community is almost palpable. This was not a civilization of god-kings and towering monuments to individual ego like in Egypt. This was a civilization of the group, of the collective, whose greatest monuments were not tombs for one, but gathering places for all. Their legacy is not a written code of law, but a stone-built landscape that speaks of a shared understanding of time, place, and belonging. The light is fading fast now, the short northern day giving way to a long twilight. The gray stones of the ring of Brodgar become dark silhouettes against a lavender sky. It is time to leave this windswept, stone-haunted world. The thread of our journey pulls us away from this northern archipelago, back towards the sun, towards a civilization that arose in stark isolation, a civilization that carved its own unique timeline into the bones of a continent we have yet to fully explore. You take one last look at the Ness of Brodgar, a low, sleeping mound in the gathering dark, and then you turn the taste of salt on your lips, ready for the next vast step. The salt-tanged wind of Orkney fades, its biting chill replaced by a new, profound dryness. The lush greens and moody grays of the northern islands dissolve into a palette of burnt umber, ochre, and stark, blinding white. The sound of lapping seawater and crying gulls vanishes into an immense, crushing silence. The very pressure of the air changes, becoming thin, rarefied, as if you have ascended to the roof of the world. You are standing on a high, arid plateau, surrounded by mountains that look like crumpled sheets of rust-colored paper. The sky is a deeper, more intense blue than you have ever seen, and the sun beats down with an unforgiving, clear light. You are in the Andes. You are in the land of the Inca, but the structure before you is from a time long before their empire rose to power. Before you, nestled into a saddle between two jagged peaks, is a city of stone. It is not built on the flat land, but clings to the steep mountainside, its terraces spilling down the slope like the steps of a giant. This is Machu Picchu, but you are not here for the famous Inca citadel that the tourists see. You have come to a place far older, a place that whispers of a timeline so deep it makes the Inca seem like recent arrivals. You are looking at the foundations, at the polygonal masonry that fits together like a jigsaw puzzle. Stones so perfectly joined that, as the old saying goes, not even a blade of grass can fit between them. This is the well-known historical fact. The Inca were master stonemasons, and Machu Picchu is their crowning achievement. But a closer, quieter look reveals a mystery. Some of the foundations, the lowest, most fundamental walls, are built in a style that is even more refined, more monumental than the Inca work built on top of it. The stones are larger, more intricately shaped, and fitted with a precision that seems almost supernatural. Local legends speak of the Viracocha, a race of master builders who preceded the Inca, who could soften stone with a mysterious plant liquid and mold it like clay. Mainstream archaeology attributes it all to the Inca, but the question lingers, a quiet hum in the thin mountain air. What if the Inca, like so many others, were inheritors? What if they built their sublime city upon the bones of a civilization that knew this land in a way we can scarcely imagine? You walk through the complex, your breath short from the altitude. The air is cool and thin, carrying the scent of dry dust and wild oregano. You pass the famous Temple of the Sun, its curved wall, a masterpiece of architecture. But your gaze is drawn downward to the massive, multi-angled stones of its foundation. You kneel and run your fingers over the seams. The fit is flawless. There are no chisel marks, no signs of the pounding with harder stones that we associate with ancient stone masonry. It is as if the stones were made for each other, grown together in place. There's a gentle, humorous absurdity to it. While we struggle to assemble flat-pack furniture with clearly written instructions, an unknown people were fitting 12 angled stones together on a mountainside without mortar and making it last for millennia. You move away from the main precinct, following a narrow stone path that winds along the mountainside. The Urubamba River snakes through the gorge, thousands of feet below, a thin silver ribbon. You come to a secluded area, to a stone that the guides call the Intihuatana, the hitching post of the sun. It is a carved granite pillar, rising from a stone platform, its angles and planes precisely cut. The well-known story is that it was an astronomical calendar for the Inca used to track the solstices. But as you stand before it, the question of the timeline becomes urgent. What if its purpose was even deeper? What if it wasn't just about marking the seasons, but about connecting to something? About tapping into the Earth's own energy, its own rhythm? This is where we find a quirky, lesser-known detail, one that blends hard archaeology with persistent legend. Throughout the Andes, there are stories of Ushnu conceptually similar to the Intihuatana, which were not just observatories, but points of connection between the three worlds of the Inca cosmos: the Hanan Pasha, the upper world of the gods; the K Pasha, the world of the living; and the Yuku Pasha, the inner world of the ancestors and earth spirits. These points were often located at places of telluric energy, where underground water streams converged, or where the magnetic field of the earth was particularly strong. The perfect stonework, the legend goes, wasn't just for show or stability. It was a form of spiritual technology to channel and amplify this energy, to tune the structure to the frequency of the earth itself. Their timeline wasn't just in the stars, it was in the planet's pulse. You place a hand on the cool, smooth surface of the Intihuatana. It feels inert, just stone. But the silence here is different from the silence of the Egyptian tomb. That was a silence of finality, of a story concluded. This is a silence of potential, of a story paused. The wind whistles softly as it passes over the precisely carved angles. It feels like a machine, but a machine whose purpose and operating manual have been lost. Archaeologists still wonder fiercely about the true age and origin of the finest Andean stonework. The official timeline places it all within the few hundred years of the Inca Empire. But the sheer perfection of the work, the lack of any evolutionary practice stages, and the persistent indigenous legends of the Viracocha continue to fuel debate. We may never know if a master civilization preceded the Inca, or if the Inca themselves achieved a brief, brilliant flash of genius that was then lost. The stones themselves hold the answer, but they are not talking. Imagine standing here, not in the 15th century, but perhaps 1,000 or 2,000 years earlier. The mountains are the same. The river below sings the same song. A people whose name is forgotten are at work. They are not using brute force. They are using a knowledge of geology, of resonance, of the subtle properties of stone that we have since forgotten. They are not building a city. They are growing one, coaxing the mountain itself into a new form, aligning it with the veins of energy that run through the earth and the pathways of the stars above. They knew the earth's timeline because they felt it as a living, breathing entity. and they were building instruments like this Intihuatana to commune with it, to ensure the cycles of sun and rain, of planting and harvest, continued in harmony. A condor circles high overhead, a black speck against the impossible blue. Its shadow drifts across the stone terraces. The sense of being at the top of the world is overwhelming. This was a civilization that looked at the most formidable vertical landscape and saw not an obstacle but a canvas. They understood their timeline as one of alignment with the mountains, with the sun, with the very spirit of the Pachamama, or Earth Mother. As the afternoon wears on, the shadows lengthen, deepening the mysteries carved into the stone. The journey is not over. The thread we are following, the thread of a deep, earth-connected knowledge, is about to lead us from these soaring peaks to a place that is its utter opposite, not the roof of the world, but one of its deepest, most hidden basements. You take one last look at the 12-angled stone, a puzzle box from the past, and then you turn, the thin, cool air filling your lungs, ready to descend from the heights and plunge into the damp, silent dark of a world beneath our feet. The thin, cool air of the Andes begins to thicken, the scent of dust and wild oregano giving way to a new, heavy dampness. The blinding white sunlight filtering through the high peaks dims, replaced by a soft, diffused glow. The towering, jagged silhouettes of the mountains soften, their sharp edges blurring into the gentle curves of rolling, forested hills. The profound silence of the high altitude is broken by a new sound, the gentle, persistent patter of rain on broad leaves, the gurgle of a stream, the distant, rhythmic crash of waves against a rocky shore. You have descended from the roof of the world and traveled across an ocean to a land cloaked in mist and mystery. You are on the southwestern coast of Britain, in what will one day be known as Cornwall, and you are standing at the edge of a tin streamworks over 3,500 years ago. The air is cool and moist, clinging to your skin. The ground underfoot is soft, a mixture of peat and clay. Before you, a group of people are working in the shallow, fast-moving water of a stream. They are the Bronze Age tin traders of Britain, and they are part of a network that would stretch across the known world. They are not building pyramids or ziggurats. Their monument is the landscape itself, scarred and channeled by their search for the soft, gray metal that would revolutionize the ancient world. You watch as they divert the stream's flow using dams of woven branches and clay. They are streaming for tin, using the water's power to wash away the lighter soil and gravel, leaving behind the heavier cassiterite, the ore of tin. It is backbreaking, muddy work. Their hands are stained with the peaty water, their clothes, simple tunics of wool and leather, are soaked and heavy. There is a gentle humor in the fact that these people, living in what the Mediterranean civilizations would have considered the soggy, barbaric edge of the world, held the key to one of the most transformative technologies in human history, bronze. Without their tin, the great empires to the south would have been stuck with soft copper and stone. You kneel by the stream, letting the cold water run over your fingers. You pick up a small, dark, heavy pebble, cassiterite. It feels unremarkable, yet this unassuming stone, gathered from this anonymous stream in this damp corner of the world, would be traded down ancient routes across the English Channel, through Gaul, down the Rhine Valley, and across the Mediterranean to the palaces of the Mycenaeans and the pharaohs of Egypt. It would be alloyed with copper from Cyprus to create bronze, the material of weapons, of tools, of statues, of civilization itself. The well-known historical fact is the existence of these trade routes. But as you hold the tin, or in your hand, the question of the timeline returns. How did they know? How did these communities in Britain know that there was a vast, hungry market for this material thousands of miles away? What understanding of the wider world, of its interconnectedness, did they possess? The answer lies not in grand monuments, but in the quiet accumulation of knowledge passed along the trade routes themselves. The quirky, lesser-known detail is one of seafaring and celestial navigation. To get the tin to the Mediterranean, it wasn't just carried over land. There is compelling evidence for sailing by the stars along the Atlantic coast of Europe. These early mariners would have used the sun by day and the circumpolar stars by night to navigate the treacherous tidal waters from Cornwall around Brittany and down the coast of Iberia. They knew the timeline of the seas, the tides, the seasonal winds, the appearance of certain constellations with the same intimate precision that the Maya knew the cycles of Venus. Their timeline was one of connection, of synchronizing their local production with the rhythms of long-distance, maritime trade. They knew when the trading ships might arrive from the south, based on the seasons and the stars. You look up from the stream towards the coast. Imagine a boat, a sewn plank craft, sturdy but small by our standards, being loaded with sacks of tin, or the traders a mix of locals and weathered long-distance sailors are making final preparations. They are checking the seams of the boat, stowing provisions. They are not just merchants. They are explorers, diplomats, and conduits of information. They carry with them not only tin, but stories, technologies, and ideas. They would have known the timelines of different cultures, the festival seasons in the Aegean, the political situation in the Levant, information as valuable as the cargo they carried. Archaeologists still wonder about the precise nature of the relationships between these distant Bronze Age cultures. Was it a chain of hand-to-hand trading where goods slowly moved through countless middlemen? Or were there intrepid, long-distance specialists who made the entire journey from the foggy shores of Britain to the sun-drenched ports of the eastern Mediterranean? We may never know the name of the first Cornish tin miner who met a Mycenaean trader, or the words they exchanged. But the tin itself is a testament to that meeting. It is a physical piece of a British stream transformed into a Mycenaean sword, a Egyptian mirror, a Hittite statue. Imagine standing here, 1500 BC. The air is thick with the smell of wet earth, wood smoke, and the temps of the sea. The sound of the stream is a constant backdrop to the chatter of the workers and the bleating of sheep on the hillsides. A ship has been sighted, rounding the headland. It is a moment of anticipation, of connection. The local chieftain comes down to the beach, bringing with him not only tin, but also gold from Ireland and fine amber that has made its way from the Baltic. In return, he will receive wine from Greece, fine pottery from Crete, glass beads from Egypt, and swords of superior bronze from Central Europe. In this exchange, the timeline of this remote corner of Britain is synchronized with the timeline of the entire Bronze Age world. They knew their place in a global network because they held one of its most vital components in their hands. The scene begins to fade, the sounds of the stream and the sea growing distant. The damp, cool air of Cornwall warms considerably, becoming dry and hot. The green, rolling hills flatten out into an endless expanse of sand, shimmering under a relentless sun. The gentle gurgle of the water is replaced by the whisper of wind-blown sand. You have been transported from the wet, networked world of Bronze Age Europe to the heart of the most absolute desert on Earth. You are in the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter of the Arabian Peninsula, and you are following the faint, almost invisible trail of a people who mastered this barren landscape thousands of years ago. The heat is a physical wall. The air is so dry it feels like it's drawing moisture from your very eyes. The silence is immense, broken only by the wind. But as you look closer, you see that the desert is not empty. There are traces, a faint, darker line of stones across the gravel plain, a scatter of black, flaked stones, the waste from tool making, a low, circular pile of rocks that might have been a hearth. This is the land of the so-called Arabian Middle Paleolithic peoples, hunter-gatherers who thrived here when the climate was marginally wetter, between 100,000 and 50,000 years ago. They left no monuments. They built no cities. Their timeline is the most fundamental of all, the timeline of human migration. This desert was not a barrier, it was a corridor. The well-known theory of human migration out of Africa often focuses on the Nile corridor or the Bal-Mandeb, but there is a growing body of evidence that another route existed across the Sinai and down the Arabian Peninsula. The quirky, lesser-known detail that brings this to life is the discovery of ancient pull factors. This wasn't just a desperate trek through a wasteland. At that time, the Arabian Peninsula was a land of grasslands and savannas, dotted with lakes and rivers. The stone tools found here are similar to those found in Africa. suggesting a continuous cultural zone. These people were following the game, moving into new territories that were familiar and habitable. They knew the timeline of the rains, the movement of the animals, the location of the next waterhole. Their understanding of the Earth's timeline was written in the dust, in the tracks of the animals they hunted, in the subtle signs of changing vegetation. It was a timeline of survival and expansion, written in the very footsteps of our ancestors. You pick up one of the discarded stone flakes. It is a simple thing, a piece of chert knocked off a larger core to create a sharp edge for cutting or scraping. It is cool to the touch, despite the sun. It is anonymous. There is no way to know if the person who made this tool was a direct ancestor of everyone outside of Africa, or if their lineage died out. But they were here. They looked up at the same stars we see today, felt the same wind, faced the same existential challenges. Archaeologists still wonder what drove these early waves of human expansion. Was it climate change, population pressure, a simple, innate curiosity to see what was over the next hill? We may never know the thoughts in the mind of that toolmaker as they sat here, sharpening a spear point, watching the horizon. But their journey was the first, most profound act of connecting the continents. They were mapping the earth with their lives. Imagine standing here 80,000 years ago. The night is vast, the stars impossibly bright in the clear, dry air. A small band of people is camped around a fire, the flames casting flickering shadows on their faces. They are roasting meat from a gazelle. They are speaking in a language we would not understand, telling stories we can never know. They are looking to the north, to the lands beyond the horizon, wondering what is there. They are at the very forefront of the human story. They knew the Earth's timeline because they were living it, one step at a time, one generation at a time, carrying the spark of humanity into the unknown. The firelight dims, the stars begin to fade. The desert wind seems to carry the echoes of those ancient footsteps, a whisper of a journey that would eventually lead to every corner of the globe. The thread of our own quest is pulling us now away from these deep, foundational timelines of trade and migration towards a different kind of mystery. We are about to turn our gaze from the earth itself to the cosmos, to a civilization that sought to map not just the planet, but the heavens, and in doing so, created a timeline of such precision that it would echo down the centuries, waiting for us to rediscover its full meaning. The cool stone flake is still in your hand, a tangible link to that unimaginably deep past as the world shifts once more around you. The cool, rough texture of the ancient stone flake from the Arabian desert is the last physical sensation you carry with you as the world dissolves once more. The immense, star-filled silence of the empty quarter gives way to a new kind of quiet, the hushed, reverent stillness of a vast, enclosed space. The scent of dry, clean desert air is replaced by the complex aroma of cedar wood, beeswax, and slowly oxidizing parchment. The darkness is no longer that of an open night, but of a controlled, man-made gloom, punctuated by the soft, dancing light of oil lamps. You are no longer under the open sky. You are in a library, but not just any library. You are in the royal library of Ashurbanipal, in the heart of the Assyrian capital of Nineveh, in the 7th century BC. The air is cool and still, a deliberate climate to preserve the precious contents of this room. Before you, stretching into the shadows, are shelf upon shelf of clay tablets. Not the tidy, square tablets of early Sumerian accounting, but a sprawling, chaotic, magnificent collection of every subject imaginable. There are tablets shaped like pillows, cylinders, and prisms. They are crammed onto shelves, stacked in baskets, piled on tables. This is the well-known historical fact. Ashurbanipal, a king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, was a passionate collector of knowledge. He sent scribes throughout his empire and beyond to gather and copy every text they could find, creating the first systematically assembled library in the world. You walk slowly down a narrow aisle, your fingers hovering over the rows of tablets. You can feel the coolness of the fired clay. The cuneiform script is dense, intricate, a forest of wedge-shaped marks. Here is a tablet detailing the omens read in a sheep's liver. Next to it, a copy of the asterisk epic of Gilgamesh asterisk. Further on, a medical text prescribing a poultice for a wound, a legal document recording a land sale, a mathematical table for calculating compound interest. The sheer volume of information is overwhelming. It is the entire known world, written down and stored in one place. There's a gentle, profound humor in the fact that this ruthless Assyrian conqueror, a man who boasted of flaying his enemies alive, was also a dedicated, almost obsessive-compulsive librarian, desperate to preserve the very cultures his armies were subsuming. You stop before a particular group of tablets. These are not stories or laws. They are astronomical diaries, meticulous night-by-night records of the movements of the planets, the moon, and the stars, alongside notes on weather, commodity prices, and significant political events. The Assyrian and later Babylonian scholars were not just stargazers, they were data scientists. For centuries, they recorded everything they saw in the sky, building up a massive data set of celestial behavior. They were looking for patterns, for correlations between the heavens and events on Earth. They believed the gods wrote the future in the stars, and it was their job to learn how to read it. But as you look at these endless columns of numbers and observations, the question of the timeline takes on a new, more mathematical dimension. What if they weren't just divining the future? What if they were discovering the fundamental, predictable mechanics of the cosmos itself? This is where we find a quirky, lesser-known detail that borders on the miraculous. The Babylonian astronomers, using these centuries of data, developed highly sophisticated mathematical techniques to predict planetary motion. They used a form of calculus-like numerical analysis to model the varying speed of the planets. Most famously, they calculated the repeating cycle of lunar and solar eclipses, the Saros cycle, with remarkable accuracy. They knew that every 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, a similar pattern of eclipses would recur. This was not magic. It was hard-won scientific discovery, born from relentless observation and record-keeping. They had mapped a celestial timeline of stunning precision, a clockwork universe ticking away above them. You pick up one of the astronomical diaries. It is heavy, impersonal. It records that on a certain night, Jupiter was in a certain constellation. The price of barley was high, and a provincial governor died. To the priest astronomer who wrote this, these events were likely connected. To us, it is a snapshot of a lost moment, where economics, politics, and astronomy were woven together into a single, complex tapestry of cause and effect. They saw a timeline where everything was interconnected, a single divine narrative written across the sky and reflected on the earth. Archaeologists and historians still wonder how much the Babylonians understood the asterisk, Y asterisk, behind their predictions. Did they see their mathematical models as mere tools for accurate prophecy, or did they glimpse the underlying physical laws? We may never know the thoughts of the unnamed genius who first discerned the Saros cycle, but his discovery echoes through the ages, a testament to the power of patient, accumulated knowledge. Imagine standing here in this lamplit hall around 650 BC, a scholar, his eyes tired from a long night of staring at the stars, is carefully inscribing his observations onto a fresh tablet. He dips his reed stylus into a small pot of water to keep the clay pliable. He is a link in a chain of observation stretching back generations and forward into a future he cannot imagine. He is not just a priest, he is a scientist, a data analyst for the gods. He knows the timeline of the cosmos because he and his predecessors have spent centuries measuring it one night at a time. The library around him is the hard drive of an ancient civilization, and he is both its user and its contributor. The scent of cedar and clay begins to fade, the close, still air of the library giving way to a new, fresh breeze. The lamplight dims, replaced by the soft, gray light of a misty dawn. The ordered shelves of tablets dissolve into a landscape of towering monolithic stones, stark against a rolling green landscape. You have traveled from the organized, indoor world of Mesopotamian knowledge to the raw, elemental mystery of the European Neolithic. You are at the Grand Menhir Brise in Lochmariacar, Brittany, and you are standing beside the largest single stone ever erected by prehistoric humans. It is broken now, lying in 4 colossal pieces, but even in its fallen state, it is awe-inspiring. The largest fragment is over 20 meters long and weighs nearly 300 tons. To look at it is to feel a sense of profound dislocation. The well-known fact is its existence. The enduring mystery is its purpose. It was part of a larger alignment of stones, a complex that stretched for miles. But the scale of this single menhir is what defies comprehension. How did they move it? Why did they bother? You walk the length of the fallen giant, your hand resting on its cool, lichen-spotted surface. The stone is a type of orthognous quarried from several miles away. The logistics of transporting it, of raising it, are staggering. This was not a practical undertaking. This was an act of immense, almost insane, communal will. There is a gentle, bewildering humor in the sheer audacity of it. While the Babylonians were calculating eclipse cycles with reed styluses, a community in Brittany was mobilizing to erect a stone the size of a small office building, for reasons we can only guess at. The question of the timeline here is not one of records or predictions, but of intention. What cosmic or spiritual imperative was so powerful that it demanded the erection of this monolith? The quirky, lesser-known detail lies in its potential alignment. While the Grand Menhir itself is fallen, reconstructions of its original position suggest it may have acted as a giant foresight for astronomical observations. From its base, other significant Neolithic sites, like the Table Day Marshing and the cavernous tomb are aligned with the solstice sunsets. It may have been the central anchor of a vast, integrated ritual landscape, much like the Nes of Brodgar in Orkney, but on an even more colossal scale. Its breaking, perhaps by an earthquake, would have been a cosmological catastrophe for the people who built it. Their timeline was literally set in stone, and the stone had fallen. Archaeologists still wonder if the social organization required for such megalithic construction was a cause or a consequence of the development of complex societies in Neolithic Europe. Did a powerful leader emerge to command the project, or did the project itself forge a powerful, cooperative society? We may never know the name of the architect who envisioned this stone, or the feeling in the community the day it was finally raised, towering over the landscape, a bridge between the earth and the sky. Imagine standing here 4,500 years ago. The menhir is upright, a stark, impossible finger of stone pointing to the heavens. The air is cold, the wind whipping off the Atlantic. A crowd has gathered for a solstice ceremony. As the sun sets, its last rays align perfectly with the shadow of the grand menhir, pointing towards the entrance of a sacred tomb miles away. In that moment, for the people watching, the universe makes sense. The stone, the sun, the land, and their community are all in harmony. They knew the Earth's timeline because they had built a giant stone index finger to point it out. Their understanding was not written on clay, but inscribed into the very bones of the landscape, a permanent, physical marker of celestial time. The gray light of Brittany begins to soften, the massive fallen stone seeming to sink into the earth. The sound of the wind changes, becoming drier, carrying the scent of sand and salt. The cool, damp air warms, and the green landscape bleaches into the yellows and whites of a sun-scorched coastline. You are leaving the world of megaliths and moving towards a civilization that looked to the sea and to the stars reflected upon it to measure their place in the world. The journey continues from a broken stone in France to the heart of a thalassocracy whose name itself means wisdom. The weight of the grand menhir, both physical and symbolic, stays with you, a reminder of the incredible lengths to which humans will go to touch the timeless. The scent of salt and the vast, star-filled silence of the Polynesian Ocean begins to soften, not fading, but settling, as if the sea itself is drawing a calm, deep breath. The rhythmic splash of waves against the canoe's hull gentles into a slow, steady pulse. A heartbeat, the boundless horizon contracts, drawing inwards until all that remains is a profound, comforting darkness, the kind that exists just before sleep or just before dawn. You are nowhere and everywhere. You are in the quiet space where all timelines converge. The journey is over. The questions we carried with us through the cold chamber of Newgrange, across the sun-baked lines of Nazca, up the steep steps of Tickle, into the bureaucratic heart of Sumer, across the wind-swept ness of Brodgar, upon the soaring peaks of the Andes, along the tin-rich streams of Cornwall, within the dusty silence of the Arabian desert, and finally, upon the vast, star-guided ocean. These questions do not need definitive answers. They are themselves the answer. The need to mark time, to understand our place within the vast turning of the world and the cosmos is the one true constant. It is the thread that connects the Neolithic farmer watching a sliver of light enter a dark tomb to the Babylonian scholar meticulously recording the path of Jupiter. It is the same impulse that drove the Polynesian navigator to memorize the swell of the sea and the Inca stonemason to align a temple with the solstice sun. We have always been cartographers of time, drawing our maps in stone, in clay, in story, and in star. There is a gentle, final humor in this realization. For all our sophisticated technology, for all our deep-time geology and particle physics, we are still engaged in the same fundamental project as those who came before us. We are still that same curious species, lying in the darkness, looking up at the stars and wondering. The methods have changed, but the quiet awe remains. So, as you lie here in the quiet, let the weight of these centuries settle over you like a soft, heavy blanket. Let the images of ancient stones and silent temples drift through your mind like clouds. There is no test. There is no puzzle to solve tonight. The past is not a problem to be cracked, but a landscape to be felt. Its mysteries are not locks to be picked, but invitations to wonder. The past is patient. It has waited thousands of years for you to wonder about it. It can certainly wait a little longer. It will be here tomorrow, and the night after that, its stories still half told, its stones still holding their secrets, ready for when you next feel the pull to wander back through time. For now, just breathe in and out. Let the silence of lost places fill you. Let the dust of ancient civilizations settle. There is no need to go anywhere or discover anything more tonight. The past has waited this long. It can wait while you rest. Sweet dreams.